We're good. Hey, we're live. We're technically, but this is Dan Arestia, very well known on the X universe for first of all coverage of the NLL games this year has been great, sir. I want to give you credit for that.
Thank you for that. Been? I appreciate it. Been trying to do some clipping and watching a whole lot more games and everything. It's been fun without the Riptide around, without the ability to go to games anymore. I find myself on the couch and in front of the screen, enjoying a lot more games that way these days.
Yeah, 4 hours away from the Swarm game. I try my best. Doesn't work.
Yeah. Much easier to just throw on the old ESPN Plus and bop around a little bit.
As great as that production is, I'm kidding. All right, so I think it wouldn't be fair to your viewers and fans if we didn't get to NCAA Lacrosse first, because you were a scout of sorts, I feel like, in some regard. What is the work you do? I believe it's you dabble in a few different avenues and platforms.
Right. So, when it comes to the college game, I'm sort of trying to see as much as I can. There are not enough hours in the day to watch the amount of lacrosse that I would love to watch when it comes to college lacrosse season. But so in the course of the year, basically, I vote in the Inside Lacrosse Media Poll. So we are now submitting our top 20, our preseason top 20. Cool. And our preseason D1 All-American teams for men's lacrosse. And then for USA Lacrosse Magazine, I do I contribute to the Division II and Division III All-Americans and weekly polls and everything there. So I do that with a guy named Kyle Devitt, who's a legend in this world. If you're in lacrosse, you know Devitt pretty well. And then a number of other folks over at USA Lacrosse Magazine too, kind of make sure we don't go too insane and get too out there. They run a comb through our work to make sure that we don't sneak in anything that's too aggressive. Sometimes some stuff gets by them and makes it to print. It's all fun. But so I do those two things for the college game. And then just sort of on my own, through my own outlet, through Sticks in Lacrosse, I sort of go through the D1 ranks and I try and find and evaluate guys I think who will be successful at the PLL level, at the pro level. I don't evaluate very much for the indoor game because I don't think I know it well enough, or I don't think I've been able to, maybe someday when I get a better feel for kind of evaluating indoor talent. Right now, I can tell you that Brendan O'Neill is pretty good at indoor lacrosse, but I don't think you need an expert for that. So, I try and find some of the guys where, maybe they're a little more off the beaten path guys, we all know CJ Kirst is going to be a successful pro. You don't need me to tell you that. I try and find some of the guys maybe a little further out there that I think are worthy of pro evaluation, worthy of an invite to camp, worthy maybe of being drafted, and trying to get some tape on those guys and seeing if I can find some diamonds in the rough.
I love that. See, you're like me a few years ago when I was dabbling in the NFL world and it didn't work out, but I was like a quarterback guy. I love this stuff.
Yeah. It's there's guys all over the college lacrosse landscape who have the athletic ability and the body type to be a pro. And that kind of gets you to be like, whoa, this guy is 6'5" and 230 and is fast. He's leading his team in ground balls. I got to see some more of this guy. And that'll take you to watch some more games. And it's how, I love players like Mitchell Dunham, who was at Mount St. Mary's this past couple of years. I think he's at Richmond for a grad year now. And he's like a between the lines monster. And he's, this freak of a LSM, but not too many people were tuning in to Mount St. Mary's games. No shade to the Mounts, to the Fighting Tommy Lionses, but I look at Mitchell Dunham and I see a Team Canada guy. I was like, this guy is a pro, but nobody's watching these games. So those are kind of the players that I go out and try and find.
And the best part is when you watch a game and realize, oh, this guy's really good too. I got to look at him too. Same team.
It takes you to guys like Brett Dobson at St. Bonaventure, who's putting up 80% save percentage in a game. You're like, I think I need to watch more Bonnie's games. He's not bad. This kid's worth watching.
He's turned out pretty well.
Yeah, it's worked out for him.
So, I don't know if you're allowed to give us your top. I mean, obviously, I'm not asking for your full top 20 here, but I do got to ask you. Let's see a team in the top 5 that you think will be considered. Is there anybody in the top 5 or even top 10 that might be considered a bold take from your end of the best teams?
Any bold take in the top 5 or top 10. So I'll say this. USA Lacrosse Magazine does their own D1 All-Americans and D1 preseason top 20 as well, and theirs is out already. Inside Lacrosse, as we just voted, I think it's out probably next week sometime, maybe 2 weeks. Right. But I will say USA Lacrosse Magazine had Army much lower than I have Army. I look at the Black Knights as a team that brings back Will Coletti, first team All-American faceoff specialist. I think AJ Pilot is going to challenge for the Schmeiser Award for the nation's top defenseman. I think Evan Plunkett's going to be a first team All-American midfielder. Guys like Jackson Eicher, who kind of came into last season, he's a guy coming off an injury last year, so wasn't as known. I think he's a really, really special talent at attack, and he's going to, command matchups for them at attack. I kind of just look up and down that roster, and I'm like, they bring back just so many, just elite players at every position. They're going to have to answer for who's going to be the goalie. They lose Knox Dent. Fort Knox is not between the pipes anymore, but look, this is the Army Black Knights. Their calling card has always been, we play outstanding defense and we get excellent goaltending. And then last year they added to it, we have some very dynamic offensive weapons too. So I have Army up there in my top 10 for sure. I think they're a top 10 team. I might even have them as high as 6 or 7. I think they're very good. I think, based on where they were last year and the amount of talent that they return, I think they're outstanding. The challenge for Army is always, and I think it was Quinn Kesnick who was one of the first people I heard talking about this, but if you go to a service academy, particularly if you go to West Point, when you get into April and you get into May, things like sleep and an adequate amount of rest and that kind of stuff isn't always going to be there in bountiful supply if you're at a service academy. Sometimes the demands of that college career could just be a lot, and it's hard to get the recovery if you're an Army lacrosse player that an ACC lacrosse player might get. So it's almost a little disadvantage for them late, but I still like Army as a team that could be there Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, so it's funny you mentioned the defense and the goaltending, because I'm thinking first thing that comes to mind is football for me, and Army's football team is always defense, run first kind of stuff. So I love that you mentioned them. Is there a clear cut number one? I feel like was it Notre? There's a team out there that's really number one team. I haven't dabbled in the NCAA world this year yet. I apologize, but who is it right now?
To me, when I do this, I always do the king stays the king until they lose. So Notre Dame has won back-to-back NCAA titles. They are the clear and obvious number one to me. And even if they weren't bringing back as much talent as they are, I would still make them the number one team. Because again, to me, if you are the defending champion, you stay number one until somebody knocks you off the throne. But look, they have Chris Kavanaugh and Jake Taylor back. Jordan Faison might win a football championship this week and then just stroll right out to the lacrosse field. They have the number one recruit in the country, a Connecticut guy who I have to shout out, Matty Jeffrey from Cheshire here in Connecticut. Number one recruit in the country. He's going to be on their team this year. Brady Picorni is a 5-star recruit for them from Darien who had, I think, 5 goals in a fall ball scrimmage at attack for them. So, there's a freshman load up. There's guys that are returning like Will Lynch. There's guys that are returning, like we said, with Kavanaugh and Jake Taylor. The losses for them are sizable. Pat Kavanaugh won the Tewaaraton. Liam Enneman was a finalist for the Tewaaraton, was the best goalie in the country. Losing 2 guys like that is hard. Losing defenders like Chris Conlon, Marco Napolitano, it's hard. But I still look at that Notre Dame team and the depth that they had last year and how much of it is back. I think they've earned, even if they weren't the defending champ, I think they earned kind of the number one spot.
I mean, even having the other Kavanaugh is not the worst thing in the world to have as well. So
yeah, Chris, again, Sean Light's probably going to be a preseason first-team All-American on defense. Chris is probably going to be a preseason first-teamer at attack. They're stacked. They're still stacked at every position despite graduating, Tewaaraton winners.
The rich get richer.
Yeah.
Tell me about, I know you mentioned that you don't really know about the indoor game, in terms of prospects, but have a question for you. Give me 2, maybe 3 guys that you have really stood out in your early recruiting that may be coming back this year that as you're expecting as freshmen this year. Give me somebody that you're looking forward to seeing. They can make it the PLL at least.
A guy who's a young guy?
Yeah, any of them. Coming back, any of them.
Guys that are in this draft class that I guess I'm really excited about. Let me think about this for a second. I love Sammy English. I love Sammy English, who's a midfielder at Q's, who's a 2-league pro for sure. Sammy was excellent at Princeton before he got to Syracuse. And it's like every time I watch him, the amazing thing is like everybody in the building, everybody 3 states over knows he wants to go to his right hand. And I still just don't ever find anybody who's able to routinely and consistently take it away. So I think Sammy English is one of my favorite players to watch for sure as a midfielder. At the pro level, I think he'll be successful as a midfielder for sure. And then let's see, who else do I really like this year? Who are
Some off the radar if you want to.
A little off the radar. I will tell you, everybody's favorite goalie coming out this year is going to be Emmett Carroll from Penn, and rightfully so. I think Emmett was the second best goalie in the country last year to Liam Entenmann, which makes him the best goalie in the country in almost any other season in college lacrosse. But
right.
Liam was just kind of special. But I will go even outside of D1. Adelphi's goalie, D2 champion Adelphi's goalie, Dylan Renner, is, I think, a pro goalie. And as I evaluate guys for the pros, I know some of the other media folks and everything have it as Emmett Carroll and then a Jack Fracchion or a Michael Gianfrancaro, and they have some other goalies after Emmett there. I'm taking Dylan after every goalie except for Emmett Carroll. I'm taking Dylan.
Wow.
He's going to remind you as you watch him, and I realize this is going to sound insane, and I'm not saying he is this player, but he's going to give you Blaze Reardon vibes when you watch him in goal.
Okay.
Like the way he plays with his body, he plays angles. He's a big body goalie, but he's also he's also just fun. Goalies we all know they're a little bit different. Dylan is no exception. Dylan talks plenty of to people. He's animated with his body when the ball's at the other end of the field. You'll see him whacking pipes. You'll see him talking to the sideline, talking to himself. He is a monster in the goal. There wasn't a goalie in America across any division that had a better save percentage last year than Dylan Renner. So I think Adelphi's Dylan Renner is a pro, and I wouldn't think twice if I needed a goalie in the PLL level. I didn't get Emmett Carroll. I would make Dylan Renner my next call.
Well, you're saying he's a big boy who plays his angles well. NLL calls.
I don't know if Dylan has box experience or not, but the energy and the interactions between players in the indoor game fit Dylan for sure.
Love it. So let's talk the NLL now for the last few minutes here, because it's been a really awesome season. We know that Panther City folded. Hey, newsflash. Ottawa now is obviously not the Riptide. They're not Ottawa Black Bears. But aside from that, who have been, I know Bandits for 4-0. Best teams for the NLL right now, just teams that have stood out wow. Maybe the Rush you didn't see coming or something like that.
I was going to go right to the Rush. I definitely didn't see the Rush coming. I feel like this season is a season that we didn't see coming. Toronto 0-5. What's happening here?
Yeah, injuries aside, good Lord.
Obviously they're as banged up as anybody, and the injuries add up, and they've had some tough breaks and all that. But I had mentioned it kind of on social, but as of this week, the teams that made the playoffs last year in the NLL have a combined record of 16-23, right? And eight of those wins are Buffalo and Georgia. The teams that missed the playoffs last year are 21-14. The NLL has flipped over from a year ago. And I think as a fan of the sport, I love that. I love that I turn it on. I don't know what's going to happen, but I think the Rush are probably my team where I run to kind of turn them on because I think they have players that are fun to watch, that are exciting. And then obviously the win-loss record makes them compelling right now. I think Zach Mans has kind of become a superstar, and I love to watch him shoot the ball. I think, big fan of Brock Haley. I was a fan of Brock's at UVM. I thought he was a guy who might be a 2-league pro, but he hasn't really caught on outdoors yet. I don't know if he wants to or if he's a, summer box guy. That's always another factor there. But so I really like Saskatchewan. I'll tell you, I know Vegas's record isn't great. I still make sure I spend a couple minutes every weekend if Vegas is playing. I want to watch. They're fun. I think Jack Hanna's name is going to start coming up when you start counting those those 5 best players in the world, those 10 best players in the world, overall, indoor, outdoor, the overall player. Jack's name is going to start coming up, I think, in those conversations for Americans.
Yeah.
the way his indoor game has taken off and the way it, has elevated his outdoor game too is I think he's good for a Sports Center highlight a week with Vegas. And that alone, again, outside of wins and losses, that alone makes them worth watching to me. Beyond the fact that I think, obviously Donville's a great player. I think Patra, is if I was going to pick somebody outside of Brendan O'Neill to win Rookie of the Year, I'm probably starting to look at Adam Patra making a case for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think Vegas is a fun team. I'll watch Ottawa because I feel like I used to go to Riptide games. I feel like I have an attachment to Ottawa, and I like seeing them. But I think the surprises of the year are the teams that are not surprises in a good way. Like we said, Toronto, and then Albany, man. Like, is Albany made the deal this week, to try and, I think spark something a little bit. But like, I am stunned to see where Albany is. And maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe because it was like, all right, they were at the bottom of the standings, and last year they played their way to the finals, and they were one of the coolest stories in the sport. Are they just back to the mean now? Is there a regression? They were over their heads, or are we looking at the real Albany right now? I don't know, but look, 3 OT losses at home for them is things are just going to break that way sometimes. But I think 1 win Albany and winless Toronto combined are, to me, the 2 biggest surprises. Yeah, I know Toronto's banged up. They've been banged up since before the season started. I don't think anybody expected them to maybe be 5-0, but 0-5, I don't think we saw coming.
No. One more thing to ask you here, because I got to broadcast this guy in Montana. If my connection's screwing up, it's my fault, but who cares? Jake Naso. I got to see him in Montana. I know he was amazing at Duke, one of the best all time at faceoff, etc. Have you been surprised about Jake Naso's box impact immediately, or was he like one of those dogs? You're like, okay, he could be both.
No, I thought, I will say, coming out of school last year when I was ranking guys, big boarding guys who I thought, based on the chances of them being a successful professional lacrosse player, this is how I ranked them. Positionally, I had Jake Naso, I think, as the best guy coming out. I think Luke Weirman is the one who kind of took off outdoors and had an exceptional year in the PLL. Jake, got, I think, added or drafted by the Redwoods and then never took a faceoff for them, ended up getting released. But Naso has always been athletic enough where it was like he could win you the faceoffs, and he's really good at that. I think he won over 1,000 in his time at Duke. So yeah. Jake can always win you the faceoff, but his athleticism is a little bit underrated, I think. In the outdoor game, I think in the outdoor game, he's a guy who will give you the outdoor version, of a Joe Nardella type, where it's like, if he's on the field playing offense, it might not always be the worst thing. Like you can't just forget about him and just wait for him to run off the field because he will punish you. So that for the indoor game, I find always translates really well. I'm happy to see Jake doing this well. Again, as somebody who's kind of just enjoys being right about guys once in a while, being the guy who thought Naso was the best coming out and that he didn't make a PLL roster, I was like, shit. But, Naso being this good for Saskatchewan, does it surprise me? No, not at all.
Love it so much. I know there's more we can get into. Women's PLL is awesome too, but God, I feel like there's so much. We've taken a lot of time.
I'm excited for that. I'm going to be there in February. Yeah. That goes in a month. We got the championship series indoors, some sixes. I'm going to go to check out the men. I loved watching the women's all-star game at it last year. I'm excited to see them get more game opportunities, get them on TV too. It's going to be good.
Well, we're going to have you on probably before that or around that time anyways. But Dan, thank you for your abundance of knowledge and thank you for your presence on social media, for spreading the game and being awesome there too. Dan, you're great, dude.
I appreciate it, man. Anytime you want, I'll be back. Just let me know.
Let's go. Dan Arestia, everybody.